You're very welcome to Radio Espial, episode 55. There's a lot to go through in this case, a lot of nuances, a lot of anomalies, so we're going to get straight into it. You can see there, Imelda Keenan is our case this week. Straight into our case summary. Imelda Keenan, 22, of Mountmellick, County Laois, was living in Waterford City, Ireland, when she was reported missing on January the 3rd, 1994. She was living in a rented flat in Waterford town on William Street. Imelda Keenan's fiancé, who would regularly stay at the flat, would later state to Gardai that she told him she was going to the post office to pick up her unemployment benefit and some cat litter at a shop, and around 1:30 p.m. her brother Ned, and you're going to hear an awful lot about Ned in this case, formally is the one who reports her missing that evening, January 3rd. However, in reality, no substantive and confirmed evidence ever was verified and emerged of Imelda for the 2 weeks prior to January 3rd and the previous period over that Christmas of 1993. Now, this is a case with a multitude of different questions and anomalies that soon arose for Imelda's family on investigating Gardai into our missing person case. 30 years on, we still don't have many of those answers. We're going to go straight into, this is a very brief, I think it's about 2-minute news piece. This is actually from January 2024, I think, RTE News. It'll just give you also a bit of brief on the case. So let's take a look at that.
The family of a woman who went missing in Waterford almost 30 years ago say they believe she was murdered. Imelda Keenan hasn't been seen since she left her apartment on the 3rd of January 1994.
Originally from Mountmellick in County Laois, 22-year-old Imelda Keenan was living on William Street in Waterford and doing a course in computers when she went missing. It was here, where Lombard Street meets William Street, that the last known sighting of Imelda Keenan took place. But since then, her family have never stopped searching for answers.
It really has taken its toll, like, on some of our families. Some of our siblings have went to their grave, and like my own mother, and all went with broken hearts, not knowing exactly what ever happened to our little sister, you know.
The Garda inquiry is still classified as a missing person investigation, but those left behind believe that Imelda was killed.
Yeah, my family knew basically from the start that Imelda was murdered. Something happened to her, because it's not in her character to run off. Imelda was doing a computer course at the time she went missing, and I know if she was alive today, she would Google her name, she would look in and see how devastated her family are.
And they remain convinced the truth will emerge.
A lot of people have come forward with information, so I think this year has been more intense, but more positive, and giving us more hope that, yeah, like we might get answers.
In the meantime, they fondly remember a woman who should now be 52 years old.
A young country girl, very shy, loved the music, as music was in our family, and I know her favourite group was the Bangles, and she kept on singing the Bangles morning, noon and night, and these are the good memories that I have of Imelda. They'll never go away. Okay,
as you can see, Brian Goggin, you're very welcome again, joining us for this timeline on Imelda Keenan.
Thanks,
Brian,
hello folks.
I kind of vaguely remember this case in 1993, when we really only started looking at it seriously. Well, I'll speak for myself, really quite seriously, about maybe 2 to 3 years ago. And kind of it has been in my mind, particularly with the recent appeals, to do something on it. And I kind of looked at it so much. I think off camera in previous episodes earlier this year, we actually went, hang on a second, we haven't actually done a timeline for this case. And we went, we've got to do a timeline for this case. How the hell have we missed out on this? Yeah. For you, Imelda Keenan, when did this come on your radar?
I think it was several years ago, really, Mick. And again, she's one of these cases that you generally used to hear of in a list of other cases, because there was certain cases would be high profile and they discussed them in depth, and then you might often hear, oh yeah, Imelda Keenan, they list out a few more cases when there wasn't a whole lot of information shared, you know.
Yeah, because we know of other cases in the Kinsale area, and we'll mention another one in the Waterford City, Waterford Dock Keys area. You know, there have been other cases of missing people and sadly murder cases as well.
Yeah, it is definitely, and this one you mentioned, and again it's kind of similar. Like we used this word before, but almost like at times Imelda Keenan's case is like an appendage onto these other cases. Then at times, you know, often these cases need a lot of help because this case stagnated very quickly, and you know, I know there's been a big push over the years from the family, very dedicated people, some of whom sadly have passed away now. But I think some of these lower profile cases, they really need huge help to get them moving and get answers on what happened to Imelda.
Yeah. And look, we'll talk about this. The early initial investigation, we'll go into it in more detail when we get into our timeline. The early investigation was, well, to pleasantly put it, was extremely limited, and consequently probably why this didn't come on a lot of people's national radar, as well as the Waterford area at the time, and the ensuing first sort of 5 to 10 years. Okay, let's get to our case background. Imelda Keenan was born on March the 24th, 1971, to Florence Flor for short, male name, and Elizabeth Keenan at Manor Lane, Mountmellick, County Laois, Ireland. She was the second youngest and came from a very large Irish family with 8 other siblings that was made up of 5 brothers and 3 sisters, and we're going to be particularly talking about the brothers in this case. It was a busy and bustling household, and perhaps being a lot younger than many of her siblings, Imelda was somewhat quiet and shy, a little introverted at times, and by her late teenage years she kept a small circle of friends. She was private with personal matters, but when you earned her trust, you were a lifelong friend. That can be argued in what you're going to hear later in our timeline, but we'll get into that. Now, there's an insert coming up. This was an interview carried out by the excellent Pandora Sykes. I think it's from a podcast called The Missing, and you're going to hear Gina talking about that early life and growing up in Mountmellick and her visits to the family. Gina, by the way, is the niece, so Imelda was her aunt. So just to clarify that, we'll go into that in more detail, which talks a little bit about growing up in that bustling bungalow in Mountmellick.
Imelda was very petite, long brown hair, blue eyes, gorgeous set of teeth, always took care of herself, loved her fashion. She was beautiful inside and out. We were originally from Manor Lane in Mountmellick, which is out the country, and it was a little country house. And I think there was like 2 bedrooms and then the sitting room, kitchen in one. The bathroom was like outside sort of a thing. My granny's house, it was about 2k away from the town. There was all of them growing up together in that small house. But as later years went on, the family moved, you know, as they got older. Donald joined the army, Michael joined the navy, and Ger and Ned joined CIE. My mother and my auntie, we moved to England. My other auntie Bernadette, she worked in the factory in Mountmellick, so that left Melda really and Oliver at home. But I knew that Melda, as soon as she got old enough, she wanted to move as well. So basically they all flew the nest at a young age. Imelda was a big writer. She would always write letters to my mother and correspond through letters, but she would never leave Ireland. We'd come for the summer, we'd come for like nearly a month or more, and then maybe a Christmas. All of them were very, very close, and they made my summers when I was a child coming home to see them all as a one, like together. When we did come back, I was glued to Imelda, like I would not leave her side, and Melda would like look after us like we were her kids. I looked at Melda as like my cool auntie, like my best auntie. You know, we would do like mushroom picking back in the day, like playing out in the fields, jumping into the river. Imelda wouldn't do any of that because she didn't want to mess her hair up. Our family were very witty and very sarcastic, and they used to say, look at Imelda, the banshee in the corner, always brushing her hair, but she just took so much pride in herself. She had us in a line, I remember, like me and my cousins all in a line, and she'd be like, with a wooden spoon, and she'd go like, do, re, mi, fa, and we'd all have to do it. And then if I got it wrong, she'd give out to me, and then we'd all have to start again. There was never any one-to-one confiding in me in anything. I think I was too young for that. I think if she did any confiding, it was with her brother. But I think she would keep her private life separate from her family life. She never really talked much about what she wanted to be when she grew up, but she always talked to me about just life in general and being happy and getting married. We would talk about dreams, innocent stuff. I think she just wanted to start up like a bit of a life. She's seen all her other siblings doing it, so I think because she was coming to the age, because she wanted to do it. And the safest place to go would have been Waterford, because she had Ger there, her brother, and then she had Ned, her brother, and Michael was only in Cork, so she had her nieces and nephews down there as well. So that's where she found a foundation she was going to build from that. She moved in with her brother Jerry, but he had like 4 or 5 kids, so I don't think it suited Melda, because it's a busy house she moved from, so she didn't want to move into another busy house, if you get me. So she did stay there for a while, and she did go to her brother in Cork for a while as well. She did go back and forth, I think, before she found her feet in her own little place.
So as a petite and pretty young lady, Imelda developed a real passion for music, singing. Her family was quite musical, fashion and makeup and writing. The writing is an important part later. After leaving school at age 15, she spent time living in Waterford and Cork, where her older brothers Ned, Jerry and Michael lived. I think it was Ned and Jerry who lived ultimately in the end in Waterford. It was Michael who lived out in Cork. By late 1988, she rented a small bedsit flat in William Street, Waterford City, and began a serious, long-term relationship with a guy called Mark Wall. He was a musician playing in a local band called Spellbound. My understanding is there's another band, I think it's from the Bray area, and I have asked colleagues, musical colleagues, about this. We don't believe it's the same band. Believe it or not, there's another band, I think, in the US with this name. So please be careful if you are doing your own personal research not to confuse, and be certain you're looking at the right reference to it. This is Mark Wall, a little older in life, obviously much younger at the time. I believe he was in his, he was 3-4 years older than Imelda. Imelda was 22. I think Mark was in around the 26, getting on for 27 years of age at the time. Now, as I say, Mark was several years older than Imelda, and due to the size of Imelda's own rented flat in William Street, Mark continued to live permanently at his parents' home, and he had stayovers at Imelda's flat. The pair became engaged early on in their relationship. I believe they met sometime in late 88, and they were actually engaged in 1989. She soon became involved in the world of CB radio, which her boyfriend was involved in as a hobby, going under, this is Imelda going under the handle name of Moonlight. Now, Imelda would still take regular weekend visits to her original family home in Mountmellick, Laois, and remain very close to her 2 older brothers in particular, Jerry and Ned. And I suppose that was partly because they helped out with her when she moved to Waterford, because that's where they were based and living. Yeah, it was not unusual for her to spend a few days or even a week with them in Waterford, her brothers, or return to the family homestead in Laois over summers and holiday periods. Now, in the lead up to December 1993, Imelda had taken a part-time computing course at the Waterford Technical Institute, I think it's called the WTI, in computer studies, a course acquired while she was still within the social welfare system, and it had been recommended to her that it was something she should pursue, and she was interested in going down that line. Now, at the time, her father Flor had recently passed away, and understandably this was difficult for all the large Keenan family. Now, I think this is the moment we'll move to our timeline on the case of missing Imelda Keenan. Before we start, Brian, any further thoughts?
Yeah, she was very young, obviously there.
Yeah.
Just that's one certain things there. So she would, yeah, I mean, very independent then, like, you know, struck out on her own young there. By age 17, she had her own small bedsit flat there, like, and
well, I think that yeah, she was. That wasn't the ultimate place. I think she spent. I believe she kind of initially she tried out Cork with Michael, and then thought, no, I want to live in a seaside town like Waterford. She'd had many visits to Tramore, and obviously her brothers Jerry and Ned had moved there, and she decided, no, this is the place that I'm gonna settle. And that would have been around, as I say, 88, 89. So yeah, she was still right, 17, 18. Yeah, just
she wasn't going into a house share with her mates or anything.
Yeah,
she
yeah,
got herself set up there independently. So, you know, she independent street there, like, and you know, so, you know, that was good there. But, you know, it's very young, like, you know.
Yeah. And I think a key word there, and maybe I didn't use it in the timeline. Yeah, she was quite independent-minded. Now, onto our timeline. December 1993. Imelda has decided not to spend the Christmas week staying with her mother and visiting siblings in Laois, Mountmellick. Instead, she will spend time there post-Christmas and over the New Year period with them in early January. Now, the family learned that this arrangement through, I believe, a Christmas card that was sent to a number of family members, where she mentions, look, I'll see us all actually after the Christmas period. So the family were aware at the time that, you know, she's in a serious relationship now with Mark. She's independent, she's doing her own thing. That's fine, that's okay. Around the 10th of December, Imelda meets her brother Ned, Edward Keenan, for a casual meeting in the Three Ships pub in Waterford City. It is around or just after this time that Imelda reaches her semester break for her computer course. I felt we mentioned Ned so often, you know, and I think I mentioned this to Gina Kerry as well. I felt it was important to put a face. It's always important to put a face to these people. You know, I mean, we reflect back on the Layla case and the difficulties we had where you don't have a face to be able to put. So you've got Ned there on the Three Ships pub. Now, unknown at the time, Ned is going to be the last family member ever to see Imelda. She has a particular close relationship with him, and he is often the person she turns to in times of trouble or stress. He would later state to family that she was a little down in herself coming up to that period, but nothing that overly concerned him. And she had her ups and downs, and Ned and Jerry, the other older brother, living in Waterford, had done an awful lot to help her out and help her get set up, and so she relied on them and confided in them an awful lot. So she started making preparations, and she's bought some presents for close family as well as young nephews and nieces. She doted on her young nephews and nieces as an aunt. She's also purchased a wreath to lay on her late father's grave for January, when she headed to Mountmellick as planned. December the 20th to the 24th, so up to Christmas Eve, Ned, her brother, experiences 2 failed attempts to see her again for 2 days in a row just before Christmas. I might just qualify this by saying Ned was in the habit, and both of them, Ned and Imelda, in at least seeing each other once a week. It might be that Imelda called over to his house, or they just happened to meet somewhere in Waterford for a chat, something very casual. So the pair usually met once a week, and on one of these visits, Ned went to the house thinking, well, strange, haven't seen Imelda in a couple of weeks. He recalled the lights been on inside Imelda's flat, and so he hangs around, because it's around the Christmas period. He just wants to say hello. So he hangs around the area for more than an hour, but without success. Imelda doesn't return back, or the door's not answered. Okay, fair enough. Maybe she's off with Mark doing something else, or visiting relatives. It's Christmas time. Okay, well, whatever, sure. We'll see her after Christmas anyway, as she said. Now, Sunday, January the 2nd. So we are now after Christmas, and we're actually now into the new year of 1994. Mark Wall stays overnight with his fiancée Imelda at the William Street flat. He has his own set of keys to the flat. So this is the Sunday now, the day after New Year's Day. The following day, on Monday, January the 3rd, as quoted in statements by Mark Wall, around 1 to, we think, closer to 1:30 p.m, the following account of this day is entirely attributed to Imelda's fiancé, Mark Wall, to later investigating Gardaí. Imelda told her fiancé that she needed to pop out to the post office to collect a dole payment, that's a welfare check, a welfare payment, and also buy cat litter for her little cat she also doted on, Felix. Mark Wall, reported that she washed her hair that day, she made him a cup of tea, she did her makeup, and then headed out at approximately 1:30. She was very fastidious about appearance, and you can see from some of the images we've showed you. She was a particularly attractive young lady, and well groomed, well presented. When she left, she was wearing a casual, distinctive leopard skin ski pants, a white round neck jumper, and waist-length denim jacket. On the afternoon and the evening of January the 3rd, and this is now remember, it's January, so it's pretty much already getting dark. It's almost dark at this stage, 4 to 4:30 p.m. Mark Wall visits Ned Keenan, the brother of Imelda, at Waterford train station, where Ned works for CIE. In fact, Jerry, the other brother, also worked and was based in Waterford train station. They both worked for CIE, that's Chorus Umperehren at the time. It was the National Rail Network. He informs him of his concern that Imelda has not returned to her flat in William Street. Despite only being 3 hours, he insists to Ned that she's missing. Both of them will later that evening search the streets of Waterford, and they're driving around in Ned's car with Ned driving and Mark in the passenger seat. Now, it's just a quick note here. It's important to say, because I can already hear the questions, it's important to say that this was 1993. I think I got my first mobile either in 1992 or 93. And I've 20 or 30 people in my network around me, both work and privately. I think there was only 2 of us that had a mobile phone. So few people had them. Yeah.
That's kind of 96
yeah.
or so. Or
7, that's when it really took off. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no mobile phones. And the Keenan family homestead, that's Liz, the mother in County Laois, did not even have a landline phone. So it takes many hours to establish that other family relatives and friends of Imelda have not heard from her in more than 10 days over the holiday period. So we're moving to 11:30 midnight. I think it was shortly before midnight. Uniformed Gardaí called to the Keenan household in Laois after Ned, the brother, has made a formal missing person report to Waterford Gardaí. In later days, but more detailed interviews, Mark Wall will report to Gardaí that Imelda told him she had been extremely depressed for quite a number of weeks. Many of the initial lines of investigation will be solely based on his account of events. Brian?
Yeah, just this is where it starts.
Well, we know where we're going with this, and we talked a bit. I think we talked a bit in the Layla case, didn't we?
Yeah, it's I think that certain quarters had almost free reign to set the narrative at this point. No, you know.
There's we said it during the Layla case, and we probably touched on it in other cases with Kieran as well.
Yeah,
as Gardai, you fucking never ever base your entire early lines of inquiry on one statement and take that carte blanche. That's it. That's everything must be circulated around that. There are other people, there are other statements, there's other things you can be doing. It's a process of elimination. It's not, that's what must have happened.
Yeah. Furthermore to that, Mick, you certainly don't base your whole thing around the statement of the other half either. Because that's the first place they always look, whether they're guilty or innocent or whatever, it's the first place they look.
That's the first place you want to shine the torch and go,
exactly.
Okay, let's make sure we can verify all this. How is all this verified?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of this wasn't verified, as we'll find out. So we're on to Tuesday, January the 4th, 1994. So this is the day after Ned, late that evening, has formally gone to Waterford Garda Station and reported Imelda missing, based on the account Mark Wall has given him when he visited him and turned up at 4:30 that previous day at Waterford train station.
Just sorry to make one more thing as well.
Yep.
So I think like each of those statements as well would have come from him, I presume, like what she was, the leopard skin print ski pants, the white round neck jumper, the waist neck denim jacket, I presume, like what she was wearing,
what she did, where she was going, what she was wearing, everything. One statement.
Yeah.
That's it. So Tuesday, January the 4th, 1994, several members of the Keenan family, understandably, arranged to meet Mark Wall at Imelda's flat. Wall reiterates his account of last seeing Imelda the previous lunchtime. The family members immediately begin to notice the presence of items which simply should not actually be there in the flat. That is, Christmas presents bought by Imelda for her family. Remember, this is January the 4th. Particularly her young nieces and nephews she doted on, and never given. Unopened presents from her family to Imelda. The wreath for her father's grave. Imelda's prescription glasses, which she wore daily. I know you saw a lot of pictures where Imelda doesn't have glasses. She had a thing about not wearing glasses, her general glasses, when pictures were taken. So in case you see lots of pictures with no glasses on Imelda, that's not the case. She mostly wore her glasses. They were essential to her. She didn't have great eyesight. Also, present was her purse, her handbag, some other personal belongings, her ID, were all found at the flat during police investigations, and some of the items witnessed by visiting family members. Now, in reality, it was really the family who noticed this. The Gardai had really only done very casual and cursory kind of, had a presence in the house, but weren't there to search the house. Family members inquired about Imelda's diary to Mark, and he states that he's unaware of its existence. We'll pick up on that later. As family members quickly begin to try and comprehend what has happened to Imelda and where she is, a pattern begins to emerge. Prior to Christmas 1993, a number of family and friends recount days when they visited Imelda's flat, but got no answer and never saw her. It wasn't just Ned. There were other people who thought it strange. They didn't see her in the supermarket. They didn't see her walking about the streets. Even some of our friends who she wasn't in as much contact thought it slightly odd that they'd not got a postcard, a Christmas card or anything in the recent week or two from her.
and people have routines as well. So you know, if you
and she was very much routine driven.
Yeah. So I mean, if it's not a massive place either. You'd expect the area she lived in there. You know, like you say, in the areas like the local supermarkets, or if people walk in the same stretch of the road every day, going to and from work, whatever, you bump into the same people regularly,
When they got to the flat, Melda's belongings were still there. Her glasses, her money, her few pence that she had, and her cigarettes, her bag. So she left to go to the post office with nothing, not even her glasses, which is alarm bells for us, because she needs her glasses. If anything, you can walk out without your fags, but I would never walk out without my glasses.
So throughout January 1994, having interviewed and taken statements from all relevant family members, friends and fiancé Mark Wall, the Gardaí investigation raised one line of inquiry that Imelda may have been depressed and they could be dealing with a suicide. Searches are undertaken in the local area and waterways. The River Suir would have been the closest one. These searches uncover nothing, and these happen over a number of weeks. And in fact, they were repeated even years later with nothing. However, Gardaí note that a regular daily, weekly diary that Imelda kept and known about to family cannot be located at the flat or in Imelda's returned belongings to them. In other words, Mark told them, "Got a diary? Don't know what you're talking about. I've never seen or heard of a diary," despite the fact that the family members knew that Imelda continued and always continued to religiously keep a daily to weekly diary. So numerous...
Gina as well. Sorry,
Gina, yeah.
Gina said what dedicated diary she was and how she instilled it in her and bought her a diary as well.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
She was a teenager and just, instilled that in her how important it was.
And just to mention, this was a thing, again we go back to, for God's sake, surely they must have had landlines. They didn't have mobiles, okay, so they had landlines. This is how Imelda communicated an awful lot. She was a great letter writer, postcards for every little thing. That's how she communicated things to people. That's how people knew what she was at, what she was doing, where she was, what her plans were, arrangements were. That's, again, I always say, don't apply what you would do or what you think that person should do, and don't apply it as if it's 2024 back to 1993. So numerous searches, including land and water, and using resources of the sub-ACRI unit and the divisional search team, commence over a number of weeks, but have no success in finding a trace of Imelda. The AGS liaised with the Welsh Police Force, Manchester Interpol, in relation to DNA profiles and bodies recovered should remains ever turn up. Now, you might say, what? Why would they be doing that? That's just normal. The reason why is, if you're on the Irish sea coast and for whatever reason or belief that you may have went in the water for whatever reason and your body is taken out, we know of cases where bodies from Ireland and vice versa have turned up in the coast of Wales. I think even in places like Liverpool.
Connolly case there.
I'm thinking back on the Bernadette Connolly case. I think it was Donna Bate, was it, Malahide area, that she's believed to have went tragically into the water, and about 6 to 8 weeks later her body was found in Wales. So that's the reasoning there, okay? So Imelda Keenan's PPS number, that's like an official government number everybody gets assigned, has not been activated, nor her credit union account accessed. Her last payment was collected on a date we know between 20th and the 24th of December. I have went through this with Gina, her niece Gina Kerry, even up to last night. The Gardaí, I'm sure, have this information, but they will not disclose to the family whether Imelda when, what date, or who exactly. In other words, you might be familiar with picking up a welfare payment by sort of proxy or signature. In other words, on the slip that you have at that time. I've experienced this with a wife who was on maternal care and picking up her payment, a welfare payment, maternity payment, at the post office. She would sign it herself and nominate me to pick up the. So that was a thing that you could do at the time. Now it's all, of course, digital and bank transfers. You don't have to go anywhere. So just to clarify, you know, what that's about. But of note, the Keenan family do not actually specifically know who, if it was Imelda, picked up that payment, and it would have been a double payment prior to Christmas. Gardai then, in January 1994, and to this day, continue to appeal to persons who may have resided or frequented numbers 4 to 5 William Street, Waterford, that's where the bedsit was, during this period. Gardai searched CCTV from the Waterford area, but find no evidence of Imelda. Again, I think that was very limited and very cursory searches. However, there's a new last confirmed sighting of Imelda on the day of her disappearance, January 3rd, in the afternoon, lunchtime, when she is reportedly seen crossing the road by a local doctor's secretary driving with a work colleague in a car. She said, the woman driving the car, she saw Imelda when she stopped walking at the road junction. That was Key Street, I think it was Lombard Street into William Street, to allow the secretary's car to pass. This is where, you know, you have a junction and you stop in the middle of the road.
Lombard Street, William Street. So there's some confusion. Some people said the flat was at Lombard Street.
The flat. I forgot. This will tell you a lot about the Garda investigation. They still have it listed as Lombard Street, even though technically it's not. It's William Street. For God's sake, look at our thumbnail, William Street. The secretary then saw Imelda walk around the corner towards the Tower Hotel onto Lombard Street. In the subsequent years, and due to other lines of Garda investigation, this sighting has since been discounted as either the wrong date or simply mistaken identity. But more likely, it's the wrong date in question. Whatever happened to Imelda, Gardaí are certain it occurred between December 20th and December 24th, 1993. Critically, Gardaí didn't initially treat Imelda's disappearance as suspicious, and instead went on that one statement and branded it a runaway or suicide case. They made no thorough search of her flat or forensically examined it, anything which in subsequent years led to widespread criticism of the handling of the case at the time. By February 1994, with increased local media and national attention now, Mark Walls, probably under stress and pressures, a horrible experience to go through. Mark Walls' band Spellbound, they stopped performing, and ultimately the band split up soon after that. 1994 through to 2000, so we're going to start jumping some years here. Ultimately, Gardaí dispensed with their deliberate missing and suicide lines of investigation as a key suspect begins to emerge. But to this day, Imelda's case is still formally classified as missing, and that is right up to this month. Post 2000s, the Gardaí family continue their public media appeals, and the campaign is now led by Imelda's brother Jerry Keenan and her niece Gina Kerry. So we're going to make a big jump now. It's October 2006. Now, I'm not making case connections here. There's a reason I mentioned this case. Meg Walsh, a 35-year-old single mother, goes missing from the Waterford area. 2 weeks later, her body is found in the River Suir in Waterford, not far from where it is believed she entered the water. On examination, it was discovered she had 3 severe head fractures, and her case was upgraded to murder. In December, her husband was charged with her murder, but ultimately, I want to stress this, he was found not guilty in the Central Criminal Court. Now, the relevance of that case, I'm not making a case connection, on making a location and circumstance connection. In regards, we know that people, whether through accident, attempted to take their own life, went into the River Suir, and their bodies were found days or within weeks. And in this case, it's a perfect example of a woman unfortunately murdered and dumped there, but yet her body was found 2 weeks later. Why have we not found Imelda Keenan after all the land and sea searches? Something doesn't add up here. Now sadly, Imelda's mother Elizabeth died in 2009, and unfortunately her two brothers, Ned, who you heard a lot about, Ned also sadly died along with Donal. I think Ned died in 2011 and Donal died in 2018, and they were also very much involved in the campaign for awareness on Imelda's case. They all went to their graves not knowing what happened to Imelda. Numerous lines of inquiry are followed up on. Some are genuine, some malicious leads. I'll give you one example. And I think if you've listened to the other podcasts on this case, you may have heard about this one. This was a grave digger. I believe was it Ballinspittle? I can't remember the specific area. He'd heard about the case, and he discovered a young woman's body in a sort of a makeshift kind of temporary coffin, placed in an unearthed grave, and just thought it odd and reported it. Ultimately, he was right to do the right thing and raise suspicions, just thought it was odd. It ultimately, the woman after burial was actually, she had to be the Garda investigation team into Imelda's case. Actually, on hearing this report in 2000, they actually exhumed the woman and tested and it turned out it was perfectly legitimate burial, nothing to do with Imelda, and it wasn't Imelda. But there were a whole host of deliberate hoaxes and false avenues about that. There were whispers in the community that Imelda's buried under one of those new buildings that went up around that time in the early and mid 1990s. Nothing came from an awful lot of this. 2012, after receiving another confidential tip-off, an extensive search focused on a derelict bungalow in Ferrybank in the hope of finding Imelda's body. However, that search was unsuccessful, and I will say it now, I know that tip-off came from a psychic, and you've heard me speak before about this. I have an open mind, but I am very circumspect when huge resources in a case go into chasing lines of inquiry based purely on I had a vision or I have a message, and resources that could be better spent are put into this. I do not deny that there are cases where sometimes it's turned out that with psychic assistance an investigation has been resolved. It turns out, yep, the person was found there. But I'm really circumspect on this kind of stuff, and people have been known to exploit the relatives of missing people and murdered people in relation to dreams and things that they think they see. So Jerry Keenan and Gina Kerry intensify their appeals to Gardaí to upgrade the case of their loved one to murder, and that's Gina Kerry there and Jerry Keenan. December 2018, during a keynote speech on an event for the National Missing Ireland organisation, wonderful organisation, Jerry Keenan, brother of Imelda, states that there are people in the Waterford area with critical information about what happened to his sister and are refusing to come forward with it to Gardaí. We're going to take an insert now coming up, and this is, I think this is not the January gone, but the previous January 2023 family appeal, and again you will hear Gina speak in this.
But when Melda went missing, also her diary went missing. We never found her diary. The 3rd of January just doesn't sit with us right. I don't think Melda would not talk to her brother. I don't think she wouldn't ignore him at the door. I don't think she would not give Christmas presents to her nephews till after Christmas. And nobody opens Christmas presents in January. They always might open on Christmas Eve, but 3rd of January, so it would have been the 4th of January by the time the family went down to the apartment. And her cat was there, the presents were there, her glasses were there. Melda was gone and her diary was gone. It just makes us feel that we're not being told the truth. I would like for anyone to come forward. If they saw Melda at Christmas, if they saw her on St. Stephen's Day or New Year's Day, just to come and tell us, because we don't know where she was for 2 weeks for Christmas. So if she was not out and she was in her flat, why did she not open the door to her brother? You know, that's just doesn't make sense to me. And we all know when the post office is going to be open at Christmas. We all know when our next payment is. You know, people, anyone that's on social welfare, like it was a bank holiday, why would she go there? And how, like, would you know by 4:30 that someone is a missing person if they leave between 1 and 1:30? I just don't feel like it's the truth. And I just want the truth. The family want the truth.
So on the 30th of anniversary of Imelda's disappearance, this is January 24, 2024, her family stated that they had presented a new dossier file of evidence to the Gardaí, and this was their own work undertaken, interviewing and dealing with tip-offs and people who communicated information to them in the community. They believe Imelda's small circle of friends have crucial information, that people that knew her at the time in 1993, knowledge that would be important to the case but have not disclosed what this could be. Gina Kerry, Imelda's niece, stated, "The family does not accept Imelda vanished on January the 3rd, 1994, as has always been believed. Instead, we are convinced she was murdered in the run-up to Christmas 1993 after a difficult time in her life when she had been under extreme pressure." Gina Kerry added that her aunt had sustained a number of injuries and was seen using crutches and wearing a neck brace in the early 1990s, though Imelda had brushed it off as brittle bones. She did have, in fairness, a condition of brittle bones, but the family are very circumspect that those injuries were the reason why she was in the neck brace. I think there was an arm sling at one stage, crutches at another stage, over a period of time in the early 1990s. Now,
that just to call out as well, Mick, the Gardaí were still giving the same story.
Yeah, the same
as well, like, you know,
same storybook narrative. Yeah.
So the family have been saying this for a long time, like, so.
Okay, that image you're seeing there, these are family campaigners, current family campaigners, Gina Kerry, niece, Jerry and Michael Keenan. The two guys, I think, if I can pick them out, starting to the left of the picture, that's Michael Keenan. He was the brother who lived in Cork. Jerry next in. That's Trish Brohan. I think she's married to one of the family members, and also councillor John Hearn, who's also campaigned with the family. And they met the Waterford Gardaí superintendent and some members of the investigation team. They presented a new file of information and evidence. I spoke about it both there. 9 months after that, nothing, and that was in January of this year. However, on the September the 6th, literally this month, 2024, finally Gardaí confirmed to the Keenan family that they have been invited to a meeting on October the 3rd for a full case update and review of their work since the submission of the file from January. They're also told there may or may not be a follow-up meeting planned for December 2024, and that's in light that obviously Imelda's 31st anniversary will be coming up in January 2025, and for that appeal. I'm going to go through this, and I'm not going to speak in detail about them, because this probably, Brian, you want to deal with this when I finish reading them, because I think that there are already questions that people have. Some of them I've tried to address. So the case anomalies and clarifications. So January 3rd, 1993, it was a bank holiday.
Sorry, 94 there, Mick.
Sorry, 94 that should read.
Yeah.
Post offices in Ireland and anywhere else that I can think of don't open on bank holidays. Even on normal days, post offices in Ireland always close between 1 and 2 p.m. So even if it wasn't a bank holiday, what on earth would Imelda be doing going out to a post office between 1 and 1:30 that was 7 minutes away, that wouldn't be open? She should have to wait there 25 minutes.
Camp out in the cold under January.
Yeah, in January. The post office was only a 7-8 minute walk away from her flat. All welfare recipients were paid a double week prior to Christmas 1993. We know the payment was made between January the 20th and 24th. So why would Imelda go to a post office without her ID, her glasses, her purse, her handbag to pick up a payment she would need all those items for? You don't just walk in and say, I'm Imelda Keenan, can I have me money? Oh yeah, there you go, off you go now. You need ID. Imelda had no known medical recorded history of depression. Imelda did not possess a passport. Yes, they had relatives in the UK, but she didn't actually possess a passport. No friends of Imelda reported seeing her or critically socialising with her from December the 20th to 24th, 1993. Or so they claim, or nobody has claimed to have seen her. This should have raised alarm bells. Privately, close friends and family of Imelda did report of occasions of Imelda being on crutches, as we said, in the arm sling, bandages on her arm in the early 1990s. There must be private doctor or hospital records of these injury events and presentation for medical care. And through a source, I know they do exist. And the Keenan family have not been given access to them. Imelda was an avid writer of letters. We've talked about this now quite a bit. Postcards and her private diary went missing from her home. The diary went missing from her home. That's how she communicated. That's what she liked to do. The Keenan family now accept that it is quite likely Imelda was not living the idyllic seaside lifestyle and happy relationship she often painted on visits with them. They do believe she was murdered, and have campaigned now for many years that the case be upgraded to murder. Brian?
Yeah, I think just a couple of things there. I suppose one thing as well, that, you know, there's been mention of and so on, like, I mean, what happened to her cat as well, and like the fact that she cared for the cat, you know, she went out to buy cat litter, like, you know, that's not really consistent with somebody committing suicide either, you know. If she did say she was going to get cat litter and so on, and
yeah, I'm gonna go out and commit suicide, but Jesus, yeah, I better pick up some cat litter for the cat and drop it back.
Yeah.
So exactly. why didn't, if she was gonna commit suicide, what? I mean, I don't mean to seem flippant, but what? She jumped in the River Soar with a bag of cat litter. Or somehow she snuck in, dropped in the bag of cat litter and legged it over to the Soar to jump in. I mean, come on, for fuck's sake.
I know, there's all that as well. And it'd be interesting to know what actually happened. I mean, did the cat disappear, or were some local kids given a present of a cat?
Gina has talked about this. They have no idea whatever happened to the cat.
So the poor cat, could have just been put in a bag and dumped.
Well,
river or something like as well. Then.
Well, I think I mentioned this in our conclusion. Mark Wall did have a set of keys for the flat, so he did have access to the flat. So hopefully the cat was sorted out and looked after after the events.
Yeah, we should still be interested to know, was the cat given away or what as well, like, you know. But I suppose the other side of that as well, like, I mean, technically they were fiancé. It was her flat. They weren't shacked up together there.
Nope. And
like, so technically, the family should have been. He wasn't her next of kin, like, You know,
Yeah,
either
look here's Imelda's cat back, Felix. Oh yeah, they eventually got some clothing back in bags covered in cooking fat grease.
Yeah, grease and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like the flat was being lived in after, like, and but it's the other side of this is like, even if she was missing or presumed suicide or whatever, then like the flat wasn't his flat. So I mean, just surely the family, whatever she had, should have gone to the family, and you know.
And you asked the question. You asked the question. I will. What the fuck was the landlord doing in all this?
Yeah, I know. Well, she. Yeah.
Mark boy, what the hell are you doing here? You're not paying me rent. What's going on? You want to start paying me rent? Fair enough, but what's going on here?
So
what are you doing here?
Flag straight away.
Yeah.
It was her flat in her name. If the rent must
who gave you those keys?
Yeah, exactly. Why do you have keys in the first place? You don't live here, mate. You know. So there's you know, that's the thing as well, and like a lot of the things you list there as well, Mick. I mean, it just seems bizarre that this hasn't been upgraded to a murder. Like, I mean, there's, you know, you know, how
if there was ever a case that needed to be upgraded to murder, it's this one.
Does.
Yeah.
But the point I was going to make there is that a lot of the points that are made there, they can be, like, for example, the family getting hold of the medical. Like, if she's declared deceased and they upgrade it to a murder, like, then those files, then it's a much better position for those files to become available to the family then, and the investigation to be given, you know, funding and being able to move
and
forward.
She's classified as missing.
Yeah.
So I would say, okay, she's missing. She's missing this long.
Yeah.
Formal inquest. Start calling people in. Come here. What do you know? Can't just so I'm not going to that. No, come here. You are. It's a formal inquest. You will appear. Here's a deposition. You're appearing. Now tell us what you know. Those kind of things need to happen.
Yeah, because it's just not good enough. Like what we were saying earlier there, Mick, about like the Gardaí say, oh yeah, until we find some evidence, this isn't going to happen, and we've no evidence of this, we've no evidence of that, and go, well, hang on a second, that's not good enough. Because the original investigation didn't do forensics of the flat. They took the Mark Wall statement as that's it. Like, then there was the sort of unofficial thinking that she committed suicide, all which took any momentum out of it. Like, so you can't just turn around and say, oh, there's no evidence for this, there's no evidence for that. Like, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence of something that happened either. So she should have been afforded a proper investigation, same as anybody else, and if there's no evidence that she's still alive, and everything points, like the family didn't just come out with the statements they made about believing that she was murdered earlier. They didn't just come out with that because their nose was out of joint with the investigation. They came out with this with evidence because the family members had conferred. There was Ned had said he got.
They've spoken to people. They've correlated information together.
The last thing they had was the 10th of December. She sent her Christmas cards early in December. There was a note from one or more of them to say she'd be down later, and so on and so on. So there was a bunch of evidence that the family had when they conferred, and this was why they came up with this. You know, so that should have been what was going to be investigated, and that should be part of the official narrative for this case. And unfortunately, it's not 30 years later. You know, so it is. You know, there's it's seriously bad form with all of this, like, you know. And if they want to take it forward, then the old narrative has to be just, you know, totally revised.
Or at least, at the very least, tested and corroborated, which it doesn't seem to have ever been. Yeah,
and like you say, I go back to it again. Agreed. If ever a case should be upgraded to being a murder,
it's this one.
Like, you know, and would open up, you know, the door for moving it on, like,
for a lot of resources and a lot more questions. Remember, please, yes, we can be critical of the Gardaí, but what the family are not calling for this to be upgraded to murder, to find somebody to hang, draw and quarter and blame. They're not seeking justice, they're seeking a Christian burial and finding Imelda. That's their only reason. We heard this in the Kira Breen case, the same thing from Bernadette, the mother. over and over again.
If
I'm
you're
not
still-
looking for
all those
vengeance.
cases,
I
yeah.
just want her home.
Yeah.
So our conclusions and analysis. There are careful nuances in this case that must be understood before reaching any conclusion. When someone inexplicably goes missing without warning, you look for patterns and warning signs, habits and changes of routine, recent or traumatic events, relationship stresses and strains, financial pressures, sudden isolation, and any kind of acute social upheaval. Time and circumstance also plays factors. We all experience changes in our lives, planned and unplanned, and over varying periods of time, but this is part of life. After that, you look at external influences, then threats, endangerment, which may be completely unforeseen or unknown events. Imelda was certainly a creature of comfort and habit. She had been with her boyfriend for almost 5 years. She had a romantic and traditional idea of relationships. She was a homebird, not a high flyer. She enjoyed free and simple things in life. But Imelda was also very quiet and private, with a close circle of friends, and this was more a new close circle of friends that she developed in Waterford. Yet gradually, over a period of 5 years after meeting Mark Wall, she had less and less contact with friends she had known from school and grown up with into her teenage years. The move from Laois to Waterford may have exacerbated this. Sometimes in the dynamics of a new and evolving romantic relationship, we create a small and new network of close friends through relationship circumstances and common interests. Well, I can see the fascination and reason why Imelda fell for Mark Wall, a musician in a band, coming from a musically inclined family herself. I thought it noteworthy that she also adopted his citizen band radio hobby. Her new small circle of social friends also appeared to have been heavily influenced by her attending Mark's band gigs and social scene. For a quiet young lady, she displayed a change I would not have expected. It is also notable that many of Imelda's new close circle of friends were older than her. Over 5 years, she maintained less and less contact with longer term friends she had known when younger. Well, this can happen in periods of our lives as we grow up and romantic relationships take over and we dedicate ourselves to them. It seems to be the case here. I can't help noting that Imelda comes across as a young lady, innocent and maybe a little too easily influenced by others, particularly those older than her. While Imelda was formally reported missing on January the 3rd, 1994, there is compelling evidence that her disappearance occurred some considerable time earlier, as far back as 2 weeks, and that evidence exists in the flat on William Street. And the events of January the 3rd fly in the face of all evidence discovered at Imelda's flat. The lack of sighting or communication of her over the 10 days, and basic common sense and reason. The only sign of life evidence that Imelda Keenan existed in Waterford on that date is Mark Wall. And to my knowledge, Mark Wall, beyond words and claims of events on January the 4th, 1994, has provided not a shred of evidence or convincing and supporting eyewitnesses to his account. In essence, and for whatever reasons or motive, his version of events is a complete and clear fabrication. We are to believe that somehow Imelda, after meeting her brother Ned around December the 10th, finishing up days later in college, has hidden herself away from the world like a hermit until January the 4th, 1994, through the Christmas period and New Year's Eve period, springing into life to collect a non-existent social welfare payment on a bank holiday Monday. It's incomprehensible that acting Gardai, supported by detectives overseeing a widespread land and sea search, accepted this version of events with little question, and whether through basic complacency or influential community pressure deliberately chose not to pursue nefarious lines of inquiry, or at least eliminate them. Beyond cursory uniform Gardai notes on the 5th, the numbers 5 to 6 William Street flat, which do exist from January the 4th through 6th, 1994, no voluntary search was requested by Gardai, nor a later forensic examination of the property by search warrant and order of court. So let me just clarify what I mean. Gardaí can turn up at your abode where you live and ask you, look, you've already told us, you know, that so and so is missing. Do you mind if we just come in and take a look around? Of course, you want to help. Of course, come in. That's what's called an voluntary search. An involuntary search is where I say, no, you're not coming in. I live here. No, go away. No, you can't. Okay, then we'll come back. We'll talk to a judge, and we have reason for search, and we'll come back with a warrant, a bench warrant signed by a judge. That's an involuntary search. That still should have happened, and that's what happens when you have to carry out a forensic search, because even in a voluntary search, Gardaí are not going to come in and literally forensically turn your place upside down. They have to have, because they're clearly looking for evidence, and the process of evidence gathering and the chain of evidence has to be formally documented, and that has to start in a court with a bench warrant, a search bench warrant raised. Now remember, Mark Wall was not a renting tenant of that property. Despite Imelda being his fiancé, Mark Wall played little or no role in the alert and appeals for her in the subsequent days, weeks, months, years. Nor was he or his family active in the voluntary search for her in the following days and weeks. Remember, this was the Walls family's future wife of their son, daughter, and sister-in-law we are talking about. This isn't just some girlfriend, casual girlfriend he had. This was to be his future wife, their daughter-in-law. The couple had been openly talking about getting married in Rome once a date was set to marry and it was fixed. We might also ask, what influence and reason did this lack of active involvement play in not somehow raising attention and suspicion on the part of senior investigating Gardaí at the time? Since I first looked at this case in detail several years ago, it's clear 22-year-old Imelda Keenan met her demise long before January the 3rd, 1994. Like other Irish missing person cases, it should have been escalated to a murder status case years and years ago. But there is a paradox. Imelda was a private person. You had to win her trust to become a very close friend and confidant. Her brothers Ned and Jerry understood that. They were the ones she turned to. Blood is thicker than water. Imelda developed a new set of friends in Waterford. That seems somewhat out of character for her. Why did she so easily do that? What was the influence? What was going on? Because it doesn't seem to follow a pattern. A pattern was broken. So I'm sure her late and dear friend Rose might now quip, looking down on all of this. Those new friends of yours are not cut from the same country girl stone as you and I, Imelda. And she would be right. All of them could provide no substantive information to the investigation team, or weren't willing to come forward and give any information they had about her communications and movement up to this supposed January the 3rd post office visit. And they have maintained their wall, no pun intended, of silence for decades. Yeah, some friends, Imelda. I might quip that. With friends like that, you don't fucking need enemies. I cannot finish without at least saying that Imelda's case has very significant similarities with the case of Fiona Sinnott, for obvious reasons. Brian, maybe you want to take that point there, that note there,
yeah,
on Fiona Sinnott.
Yeah, exactly.
Boyfriend, curious set of details, missing, oddities that happened beforehand. What the hell's going on here? Injuries.
No, even down to the house, the contents of the house.
Yeah,
and,
dumped outside in black bags, weeks later.
I mean, assuming control of the house, time to get things sorted out, etc. And ahead of the narrative that came out, and then all those injuries and the fact that they're documented as well. Like, even though I know Fiona's family got to see them, but Spartan and Imelda's family do as well. So it's very similarities there definitely make like.
Okay, look, we are where we are with this case. We will, of course, update this case following meetings, which I believe are to happen on October the 3rd with the Keenan family. We'll update you if anything comes out of that and there are any developments, but no, we've kind of already said it. Is there anything, Brian, even for you, that I haven't covered in this time, or a question, or a whole that I didn't, you know,
very, very thorough, Mick. All I say is I just really hope that, you know, even like it is frustrating, so I can't imagine how the family feel like to hear the same narrative from that was there from the start being thrown out again on the 30th anniversary earlier this year. So I sincerely hope that this meeting on 3rd of October will take things forward, and that
and hopefully that the case is escalated. Yeah,
that what the family have submitted is going to be taken seriously, and the case will be escalated based on that, and that the timeline will be revised correctly. That she was murdered a week or longer before she was declared missing.
Yeah,
and that they'll take it from there. Then
Yeah, and that hopefully that closed wall of silence and network of friends go, look, for God's sake, it's 30 years. Let's just come forward and say what we know. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe there's something in it.
Yeah, but it's not good enough, Mick, to say there's not evidence there. You have to look the evidence there.
It's not gonna. It doesn't come knocking on your door. You have to go out and find it.
You have to, and these cases have to be worked the hard way. Like, you have to have somebody who's going to be tenacious, who's not going to be afraid of any coercion or intimidation, and they're going to go in and pull all this stuff apart, pull apart those networks of people, and get the answers. Like, because it's kind of this passive kind of there's no evidence there, blah blah. This kind of passive stuff isn't going to work here. It has to be an active investigation, and the sooner it's upgraded to being murdered, the sooner they can get an active investigation going on it there.
As I said there, look, if you think there's something that I haven't covered, or you're confused by anything in the timeline, I know there's an awful lot of detail there, put them in the comments under this video. As always, please be respectful. Don't start making accusations in the comments about anyone mentioned in this case. And also, and I have had it, and I have no time for it, do not start engaging in, well, she should have done this, well, I wouldn't have done that. Don't start the victim blaming. I have no time for it. Your comment will be deleted. Fuck off somewhere else. Try another channel that is happy to entertain all that. If you have a question and you think there's a hole somewhere in the timeline that I haven't covered, or just something that I didn't mention or clarify, by all means ask me in the comments. I do my best to answer as many of the comments that we get. And to finalise again, thank you really all for the new subscribers. We keep growing and growing, and I'd like to think it's because we're doing things the right way here. And also I'd like to thank in particular Gina Kerry, who was aware that this time was going out, and in fact I have in recent days been having discussions and chats with her, and thank you for all the time she gave this and the support, and she has all our support, and as do all of the Keenan family. Thanks again for joining us. Thanks to Brian for joining us for this case of Radio Espial. As always, please, as I say, be respectful in the comments. We'll probably see you in a couple of weeks for quite an intriguing case that you may not have heard of, and I have no idea why I didn't hear of this case. I'll tell you more about that over the next week to 2 weeks. God bless, and take care of each other.
Thanks for tuning in, folks. All the best.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.